As we approach the end of the year, I like to watch some of these videos, usually, you know, looking back on 2024 and looking forward to 2025. Here we go. I love MMOs, you love MMOs. It's the only kind of game I really play. MMORPG tier list for 2025. The best MMOs and the ones to avoid. Ooh, let's see where WoW falls on this list and all your other favorite MMOs here. This one from Lucky Ghost.
As always, this is going to be a brutally honest MMO tier list.
We're just waiting for servers to come back.
Let me know if you agree with the rankings. I've made some big changes to this tier list based on the decisions of the developers over the last year as we head into 2025. The first game we're going to talk about, and one that you're probably very familiar with, is WoW Classic. This is also going to be the first game I knocked down a peg, thanks to some of the decisions the developers have made over the last year. Launched in 2019, WoW Classic is a relaunch of the original game. It's a classic take on the MMO experience. Minimal cash shop, gear is earned in-game, weapon cosmetics can be earned in-game, mounts can be earned in-game. It's everything I could hope for in an MMO. Last year I put it in S tier because Blizzard had just announced Classic's next expansion. They added Hardcore as well as Self-Found, and they added Season of Discovery. WoW Classic was thriving. The problem is that Season 2 and 3 of Season of Discovery provided a twist that I didn't like at all. They turned WoW Classic into retail WoW by focusing on getting everyone into the same endgame raid to run over and over. This removed everything I loved about Classic, which was leveling from zone to zone, experiencing...
Well, I guess they fixed this with Classic, right? I mean, but what's going to happen if Classic slowly advances out of, you know, vanilla WoW into the expansions of TBC and Wrath of the... What's going to happen? Guess what's... It's turning into retail. I mean, that's inevitable. That's what... As the game advances, it gets more and more like the modern game because it's getting closer to the modern game. And that, I guess that's why they relaunched Classic. So I wonder if he made this video before Classic's announcement. This video is still pretty new, so maybe not. But yeah, for all the Classic Andes out there, you can relive your Classic days again.
New enemies, new quests, and new dungeons along the way. All of that was replaced by raid logging. And beyond that, I'm just not sure how many times I can return back to WoW Classic to repeat that same content over and over again. It was really fun the first couple of times, but now I'm starting to grow weary of it. So I'm going to be dropping WoW Classic down to B tier for now.
Oh, B tier.
Next up, an MMO that was briefly fantastic in its time. That's going to be Aion. Launched in the East in 2009 and in the West in 2010.
Oh my God.
It saw...
Didn't this MMO have like one of the most amazing login screens? I remember like there was like a floating city with waterfalls and all kinds of shit. I'd have to find it again. The Aion login screen. I just remember it being like absolutely glorious. Yes, I'm right. Of course I'm right. I know my shit. Here it is. Yeah. Look at this login screen. Damn. Yeah, the music too. I literally almost bought this game because of the login screen. I just thought it looked so glorious. It's such a badass login screen. I kind of miss like the epic WoW login screens, man. We don't have login screens like this anymore. WoW used to have really good ones. Now, not anymore. Now we just get like butt ring holes and stuff like that. Anyways, yeah, I digress. Here, okay, back to the video.
Great success in Korea, but it just couldn't seem to retain its players here in the West. It went free to play in 2012, and with that change came pay for convenience and pay to win transactions.
Make login screens great again. That's what I want.
This game was so unique when it launched. It was gorgeous, and gliding around the zones was a ton of fun. But for me, ultimately, I found it to be just a little bit too grindy, and I eventually lost interest. I suspect this is what happened for much of the Western audience. During its launch, I probably would have put it into A or B tier, but right now it's a shell of its former
gotta move
self.
over here or
It might be
something.
fun to go back and play for the nostalgia, but it's not the game that it used to be. And for that reason, I'm gonna have to put it in the C tier. Next up is Albion Online. This MMO is doing something that a lot of MMOs aren't doing right now. Its population is actually still growing. Albion Online is a free-to-play
really?
MMORPG launched in 2017,
move myself
and
like
it's done
10
a
times
great
today.
job of maintaining and growing its player base. It's a classless MMO in which the gear you wear determines the abilities that you use. It's got a massive passive tree to work your way through, and this is definitely the best full loot PvP MMO available if you're looking for...
Is Albion Online a top-down MMO? It's not, it doesn't look like it's a third-person MMO. Is it? I've never played Albion Online, but I have heard plenty about it.
one. It's on a fantastic trajectory right now with 5 years of player growth, and it keeps getting better. But my biggest gripe with this one is that you can walk up to the shop and buy the best gear in the game with cold hard cash. That kind of pay for power in a PvP game just doesn't jive.
Well, that kills it. I mean, if you could just go buy the best armor, then yeah, it's not
well with me. So I'm gonna knock it down to B tier this year. If you're a PvP main, I can easily see you putting it in the A tier, and if you're a PvE main, I can easily see you putting it a lot lower than that. Next up, we have ArcheAge, which launched in Korea in 2013 and launched in the West in 2014. But first, now if you're burnt out on all the games on this tier list, maybe it's time to try something different. Like a game that's having a crossover you've always dreamed of. Shout out to Raid Shadow Legends.
Raid Shadow Legends.
Thanks to Universal.
Of course, Raid Shadow Legends, the biggest meme MMO of them all, is going to be the one who's my God, their sponsorship budget. If I had the fucking if I had 1% of Raid Shadow Legends sponsorship budget, I might be like on the Forbes top 10 richest men in the world. My God, how much they sponsor people.
Studios licensing.
Where's my sponsor, Raid?
Joining the fray as legendary heroes. So grab your nostalgia.
I'll be a shill. Just give me some money.
He needs no introduction. He's a mighty warrior, enhancing his own attack before destroying any evil that stands before him. He-Man absolutely takes me back to my childhood. Skeletor is a nefarious trickster who can seal his enemies in stone. Everyone can get the legendary champion Skeletor for free by logging into Raid for 7 days between November 25th and January 8th. You get Skeletor on day 7 and bonus rewards the next days after that. Make sure you start by December 25th to get Skeletor. On top of that, players can complete the Champion Pass to get the legendary champion He-Man. If you haven't started playing yet, then what are you waiting for? Click my link in the description or scan my QR code on screen to get insane bonuses available only via my link.
At this point, Raid Shadow Legends don't give a shit. I mean, they are just WoW and Diablo mishmashed together. They're shameless. They don't care.
You will immediately get a huge starter pack
Rexar,
with Champion Tagor from the Orc faction. At level 15, you'll get another starter pack with Epic Champion Ugo. And after downloading using my link, be sure to use promo code Monkey King to get the legendary champion Sun Wukong for free. Once you get into the game, join Clan Vegeta Best Arc 8888 and I'll see you on the battlefield. Shout out to Raid for supporting this channel. Thanks for listening. Now let's get back to the video. ArcheAge is a sand park MMORPG, which was known for featuring a massive explorable ocean, a crime and punishment system, and a combo-based tab targeting system. It launched really well, but they completely failed to prevent cheaters, and then oftentimes the people that weren't cheating were multi-boxing and abusing the labor system. It was an MMO that had so much wasted potential. ArcheAge 2 has been announced, but they said that that game's going to be moving away from its PvP focus and towards a PvE focus, so it sounds like it's going to be a completely different game. But back to ArcheAge 1. This is a game that
do any PvP focused MMOs really work? Like, in all honesty, do they ever really work? I don't know. Can someone name? I remember one specific back that really tried it early on, and there was like, what was it called? Age of Heroes or City of Heroes, City of Villains. Like, tried to get into PvP stuff, and that never really worked out for them. That MMO fell apart. Is there any one that actually works? I feel like any MMO that focuses strictly on PvP and the player base to create the content never works out, and that's what scares me about what's it called? Ashes of Creation. I feel like it's going to be very much player-based focused. Like, the players have to advance the game, and I feel like that sets you up for failure. Because players, you can't depend on them just make the game good. Game has to be good, and the players will play the good game. PvP works for the short term. Yeah, even New World had a big PvP focus early on, and I feel like they kind of fell off from there. Decided to go more the PvE route.
Had a ton of potential, but it's fallen short of that potential thanks to not properly managing
I
its
played
player
Warhammer
base
the
and
MMO.
making the game way too pay to win. So for me, the best thing I can do with this one is maybe return for a week for some nostalgia. And so for that reason, I'm gonna have to put it into the C tier. Next up, we have Asheron's Call, one of the first 3D MMOs releasing all the way back in 1999. While it wasn't as popular as EverQuest, it still had a huge and loyal fan base. It had a massive, seamless open world half a decade before WoW would release. It could support massive amounts of players on screen at once, and it offered an impressive draw distance for the time. The servers kept their lights on for a long time too. Eventually the game went free to play in 2014 before finally shutting down its official.
Damn, that's pretty good. 1999 it came out. It was still alive in 2014, going free to play. That's a long time. That's a pretty good run.
Servers in 2017. You can still play this game on private servers, but it's definitely not getting any more updates, and you're not likely to encounter a lot of players while doing so. Still, if you want to boot it up and take a brief trip down memory lane, the ability is there, but I think the trip would be very brief given the current state of the game, and so the best I can do for this one is put it into the C tier, because it was a good game once upon a time, so it might be fun to revisit for a week, but not more than that. Next up, we've got Blade and Soul, which released here in the West in 2016. In its prime, it was a great game with great combat, although way too instanced for my personal taste. There were way too many small zones for it to feel like a true open world MMO.
I don't like the East Asia aesthetic. I don't. I like the Western high fantasy Lord of the Rings MMO style. That's just like, maybe it's a personal taste thing. I don't like the running, with the sword hanging in the back and then the flipping and the doing and the screaming while you're swiping. I don't know. It doesn't do it for me. So that's always like knocks things down a bit if that's how the game looks.
The more load screens I experience in an
It's kind of why I never got into Final Fantasy, because I feel like it kind of plays off of that. Final Fantasy is almost like a hybrid. It kind of pulls a little bit off of Western MMO look, but it's certainly like that East Asia, look.
MMO, the less it feels like an MMO.
It's like a DLC.
But like I said, the combat was great and the game was gorgeous in its time. But today, it would be accurate to describe it as an almost dead pay-to-win MMO. And so for that reason, the best I can do is put this one into C tier.
Damn.
Next up, we have Bless Unleashed, which released in 2020.
2020?
They keep remaking this game and they keep re-releasing it, but it never survives. Is it the pay to win? Is it the lack of depth? Maybe it's all of the above. There just seems to be a lot missing from Bless Unleashed and its predecessors, and it might be time to make something entirely new. As a result of all of this, Bless Unleashed has now shut down entirely. This game wasn't received very well when it was launched, it was pay to win, and then it was shut down, and so for all of these reasons, this one's going to be the first game to go into the F tier. Next, we've got a brand new MMO.
Before he gets into this, I will say one MMO that came out that I did appreciate the aesthetic for a lot, and I think it was just wrong MMO, wrong time, was WildStar. I always say this. I think WildStar had a lot of potential, and had it come out at the right time, I think it would have actually survived. WildStar was a really cool looking MMO, and it had a lot of like old Blizzard devs that worked on it. It had a cool anime-ish style. It had a Horde and Alliance faction thing going too. It was a pretty cool looking MMO, and I played a tiny bit of it, but it died off pretty quick, and I just think it was just didn't come out at the right time to actually survive. I think Korean and Chinese MMOs invest heavily in boob and butt sliders. True, yeah, they got a lot of those good physics. I don't think Western. I don't think they stick as well for Western audiences. True. If WildStar would have come out during the pandemic, it would have been one of the best MMOs on the market. I totally agree. I'm not trolling when I talk about WildStar either in that fashion. I really think it was a good MMO. It was one of the first MMOs to introduce aimed abilities, right? Where like you aim your ability, it's like Plunderstorm. That's kind of how the gameplay in WildStar worked. It was cool.
This one just released here in late 2024, and it's called Brighter Shores. So far, this one has been really well received. If you like RuneScape or you like old school RuneScape, there's a very solid chance you'll like Brighter Shores. It's no coincidence that the guy who made RuneScape also made Brighter Shores. As such, it's shaping up to be a solid entry as a RuneScape-like, with a big focus on skilling, capes, and questing. The game is in early access, and it's a long way from being complete, so the best I can do is put it into B tier for now, but I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on this one.
Decent.
Next up, we've got Black Desert Online. This was launched back in 2015, and is still one of the most beautiful.
I've never played Black Desert Online, but all I ever hear about it is it's a super grindy MMO. Like you are grinding your dick into the sand to play this MMO. Does that still hold true, or have they gone like pay to win? It doesn't matter anymore. That's just all I hear. Is like it's a very never-ending grind MMO. No one here did.
MMOs are
Is this video an autopsy of old MMOs? No, it's actually MMOs going into 2025. So these are all supposedly still alive. I think he already mentioned one that died, though. What is this? Black Desert Online is a grind your dick into the ground. Yeah, grind your dick off or pull out your old credit card. Okay, yeah, then that's why I've never played it.
It's often praised for its combat and its graphics, with the primary downside of this MMO being a significant lack of group content for the players who enjoy that. Recent expansions have tried to add a lot of great PvE content for the players who are looking to do more outside of the PvP side of things.
I will say it looks pretty. Like the MMO, the graphics of it, it does look like a nice, it looks like the environments and stuff do look nice in it. But you know, pay to win just kills it,
In
man.
recent years, the game changed publishers, and as a result of this, we saw a lot of things that were overtly pay to win removed from the game. It's
that's
also
good.
added a lot of quality of life into the game that
That's
you
good.
previously had to pay for. So the monetization of Black Desert Online has gotten a lot better and has successfully moved itself farther away from what it was known for before, where it had a really bad reputation of being pay to win. But there is still a very direct
Heading in the
path
right
to
direction.
pay for power in this MMO that there isn't in some other MMOs. And for that reason, I'll put this one into the B tier. Although if you're a PvP main, I can easily see you slamming this one into A tier.
Man, I don't know how he's putting this with the same level as WoW Classic. That seems a bit iffy. But I guess it's a new publisher, so maybe it's heading in the right direction.
One into the B tier. Although if you're a PvP main, I can easily see you slamming this one into A tier. Next up, we have a big one, Dark Age of Camelot. This was the first open world PvP MMO for a lot of players.
I've heard of
and
this.
It was one of the first MMOs to do open world PvP right. Dark Age of Camelot left a mark on the MMO genre more visible than almost any other MMO around. Its tri-faction open world siege warfare system was so popular that it was the foundation for PvP in massive MMOs like Elder Scrolls Online, Warhammer Online, and Guild Wars 2.
Didn't Warhammer Online have 3 factions too? Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't it? I thought it did. I played Warhammer Online. I still remember me and my buddies, we went to the Walmart. It was like before school. We went like earlier as fuck in the morning because it was a 24-hour Walmart. We went there and we bought Warhammer Online the day it launched, came back and installed it and played it. And it was like, it was just janky. It was a bit janky to start. There was like this weird thing where players were a bit farther away from you in draw distance. They used to look like they were a 2D and they would run like this. It was like, and it was completely immersion breaking. It was weird. But they were the first ones I remember that introduced world events. Like you would be in a zone and then all of a sudden something would happen. That was pretty cool. But I think they were a tri-faction game too.
You can still play DAOC today. It still boasts a small but loyal player base.
I know,
it's a long way
24-hour
from its
Walmart.
prime, but it might be fun to go back and play for a week for the nostalgia, and for that reason, I can go ahead and toss this one into the C tier. Next up, we have DC Universe Online. This one was launched all the way back in 2011. I have yet to get into any superhero MMOs. I'm not sure why.
City of Heroes. I played City of Heroes. I did. I played City of Heroes. I actually thought it was freaking amazing. The draw distance wasn't good enough on it to actually like see the whole city, which kind of sucked a lot of times. But City of Heroes was amazing. The only thing is I started getting more into WoW, and then I just never played it again and canceled my sub to it. But it was a cool game, and that's basically what this looks like. Looks like freaking City of Heroes again.
Why, but they've never called to me like the fantasy and the sci-fi MMOs have. I do recognize that a good number of people did enjoy this game, however, and some still continue to enjoy it today. And for that reason, the servers are actually...
No, I actually played as Iron Man. I made an Iron Man style character because Iron Man's my favorite superhero.
Still up and running. So I'll go ahead and put this one into the C tier. It's not my cup of tea, but it is still going, and there was a lot of people that enjoyed this one. Next up, we have Dungeons and Dragons Online, released back in 2006. This is one of the only MMOs really trying to give you that D&D experience in your MMO. You actually have a D&D narrator narrating your journey as you make your
City of Heroes, not DC. Does anyone play Dungeons and Dragons Online?
way through dungeons. This game does so much right, but the problem is that it
Anything
does
good to say about it?
that much wrong. Namely, the monetization. It's now free to play, and so they've elected to monetize it in all the worst ways possible. You want to buy skills?
no.
Sure. You want to buy levels? You bet.
Oh,
Didn't
no.
like the loot you got? You can even re-roll the loot that the boss drops by paying real hard cash. Gross. It's too bad, really.
See, the thing that I think saves WoW is, say one day the subs really do fall off and things get bad, they'll never go free to play. They'll just put it on Game Pass. And Game Pass is not free to play. You're paying to get access to all those games, which I think is like a safety net saving grace for WoW. Will it ever happen? I don't know. I kind of wish it would, because I pay for both right now. I would love to have WoW on Game Pass, but we'll see. At least with Microsoft on the back end now, we know that there's that safety net where Blizzard will never be able to just go full free to play and make you pay for everything else. That'll be the death of the game, of course.
There's a half-decent MMO experience under there somewhere, but it's hard to find between the neglect and the over-monetization. Still, if you're desperate for a free-to-play MMO to distract you for a week, this one could be one of the better ones to go back and play. For that reason, I'll go ahead and put Dungeons and Dragons into the C tier. Next up, did you hear that? Oh, that was just Elyon entering the scene. Nothing has really changed for this one.
What the hell is
pay to
this?
win, and unfortunately for it, it wasn't good enough for players to want to spend time in the world in spite of that. It launched fairly recently, and it launched in Unreal Engine 3, when modern MMOs were launching in Unreal Engine 5. So the graphics were dated at best. But
What?
most damning of all is that no one is playing.
There is nothing worse than a game that goes for hyper realism and doesn't look real. That's horrible. Oh my god.
The game anymore. The cash shop was full of create a problem to sell you the solution, and they didn't do a good job of disguising that. The combat was actually decent, and as always, I can't help but wonder what kind of success it might have had if they focused on creating a good experience instead of getting you to open your wallet. Unfortunately for Elyon, they didn't do that, and so the game was shut down in less than a year in the West, and then it was shut down everywhere else in 2023.
So it doesn't even exist anymore. I don't get it. Like, don't any of these studios learn their lesson? There's a common theme here with all of these MMOs that are dying or dead. It's bad monetization practices. I think they find like the MMO genre, they think they're going to be able to milk it like they can with some FPS shooters and stuff. It's never going to work. MMO players just don't buy into that. They will buy things. They will buy some, mounts and things like that. But otherwise, if it's a pay to play or pay to win game, like you can buy player power, those games always die off in the MMO genre.
MMO is a spectacular cautionary tale of what happens when your MMO is too pay to win. And for all of those reasons,
why does he have a
go
dead
ahead
game
and
on the
place
list?
this
I don't
one
know.
into the F tier. Next up, we have Elder Scrolls Online, launched in 2014.
I've
ESO
heard good
is a
things.
solid MMO and one of the better ones that you can play without a sub. It's got incredible dungeons, amazing voice acting, and
one of the only MMOs, like, if I ever just was like streaming 24/7 and had so much time that I had everything done in WoW and I would just play something, probably ESO. Probably ESO. It's the one that calls to me besides WoW that says, like, hey, this might be a decent one. I guess Final Fantasy's up there too, but ESO always looked cool to me.
And a lot of stuff that you'll love from the Elder Scrolls franchise. The game features an action combat system and the Holy Trinity. Its biggest strength is probably that ESO is one of the only MMOs that does...
We have a realm to destroy.
Stallion, thank you for the follow. Welcome to our Scourge.
Doesn't require a
Italian
sub,
Stallion.
while also being one of the least pay-to-win MMOs on the list. It's also one of the only MMOs still pushing loot crates, unfortunately. But if you're looking for something with a strong story focus, amazing voice acting, that doesn't require a subscription to try it out, and isn't pay-to-win, well, then there's not a lot of better options out there. And for that reason, we're going to go ahead and put ESO into the A tier.
A tier?
Next up, we have EVE Online.
Whoa, what's going on with this list? Hold on. He put ESO in A tier, but he put WoW Classic. By the way, this is Classic. I think he's going to judge WoW Retail separately. He put above WoW Classic. What the hell? I think the numbers beg to differ, but...
Put ESO into the A tier. Next up, we have EVE Online. This MMO has the most expensive subscription at $20 a month. EVE Online launched all the way back in 2003 and is still getting tons of support from its developers 2 decades after its launch. It recently saw its new player experience get overhauled, drastically improving the first few hours of the game for new players. A lot of people absolutely love this game and have spent tons of time in it. And while I have thoroughly enjoyed my time playing it, it does not check a lot of the boxes that I personally want to check when I'm playing an MMO. It lacks your typical dungeons and raids, and the Holy Trinity with DPS, tanks, and healers. It's spaceships in space, which is amazing. But being that it lacks all of my favorite MMO content, and it's getting...
EVE Online just hits me as like a spaceship simulator. That's all it looks like to me. It's like, oh, people who play just want to build spaceships and fly around.
Really old now. I'm gonna have to go ahead and move this one down to C tier this year. Next up, we have EverQuest, launched all the way back in 1999. This is one of the oldest MMOs.
The OG.
Still, it has a small but respectable population today. It's an absolute classic. It's one of the forefathers of the MMO genre. Before WoW, when no one knew what an MMO was, EverQuest was forging the path. It was the king of the genre in its prime, but it's old now and has long since handed over the crown. It probably doesn't put out enough content to be your main MMO these days, and for that reason, I'll go ahead and put this one in the C tier.
Is EverQuest still alive on Twitch? Like, do people still stream EverQuest? Where does it show up on here? I see Hearthstone. Yeah, we got WoW up here. Where is EverQuest? I feel like people still, like, there's still a very, Black Desert Online's right here. There's still people who, like, love it and play it. And there's a community around it. But, man, it's pretty, unless I missed it. Damn, this shit's pretty damn low. What the hell? Where's EverQuest? How many people are, let me, maybe if I search it, I can see how many people are currently. EverQuest, let's see. How many people? Oh, only 119 viewers? What the hell? Oh, that's a dead game. That's a dead game.
Next up, we have Final Fantasy XI. This was one of my favorite MMOs
Sam ignoring
when it
my
first
comments.
launched. Sadly, last year they announced that the game would enter maintenance mode. Servers
Probably
are going
small
to be kept
community,
up, but
yeah.
support moving forward
guess
is
so,
going to be
stoic.
incredibly limited. When it launched in 2002, the game was brutal. If someone in the group accidentally pulled one extra mob, that was it. They had effectively cost the group hours of experience, the XP loss on death, the arduous journey back to your group's grinding spot. Final Fantasy XI was unforgiving and insanely fun back in its prime. Today, it's a lot more forgiving and a lot more casual, and really nothing like it used to be. Its servers are still running, and it still boasts a decent player base, but for the vast majority of players out there, it's been long replaced by Final Fantasy XIV. However, unlike many of the old MMOs on this list that were
You can
kept
solo
alive
this now,
long
really?
after their prime, Final Fantasy XIV did not engage in predatory and pay-to-win monetization. It's still, to this day, a sub-to-play MMO with no cash up. Absolutely amazing. I wish we saw more MMOs age this gracefully. I previously had this MMO in the B tier, but now that it's entered maintenance mode, I'm going to go ahead and drop it down to C tier. Thanks to the fact that it's not getting new content, it's probably something you can go back and play for fun, for nostalgia's sake, but
Okay.
not something that you're going to actively play as your main game for very long.
EVE
Next
Online's
up, we have
better.
EverQuest 2. I remember this game's launch like it was yesterday. I went over to my friend's house to have a LAN party for the launch of this one. EverQuest 2 was supposed to be the next big MMO when it came out. It was the successor to EverQuest,
Right.
which was the most popular MMO out at the time. It
Okay,
had
let's
everything
see.
going for it.
Let's see if EverQuest 2 is surviving better than EverQuest 1. EverQuest. Yeah, EverQuest 2. EverQuest 21 works too. Am I spelling it right? What the fuck? Where's the category? EverQuest 2, that's a person, right? Okay. EverQuest 2 categories here. Yeah, I got it. Oh, 13. What the fuck? What is there? This is their channel. What the hell? Where's the damn category? I don't think they have one. I guess they're all bunched into EverQuest. Whether they're playing 2 or 1. Oh. Dead game.
There was just one problem. A new challenger
EverQuest.
entered the battlefield. Blizzard would release World of Warcraft just 2 weeks after EverQuest 2 launched. As a result, EverQuest never got the years of polish and improvement that it would have needed to be a competitive MMO today. At the launch, this
So
one was
WoW
a buggy
killed it.
mess. I don't think any of me or my friends played it for more than a week or two. So I would say this game didn't fail because WoW came out. I would say that it failed because they tried to release it before WoW came out. It just wasn't ready. The most tragic part of this
That makes
story is
sense.
that this wasn't a horrible MMO. It just wasn't as good as WoW. Though it did have some weird ideas, like taking damage while crafting. People literally needed a healer to keep them alive
What?
while at the forge. How's EQ doing today? Well, EverQuest 1 has more players than EverQuest 2. I'd largely attribute this to the fact that EverQuest 2 has terrible monetization today. For instance, you can pay
Wow.
real money to resurrect your character in place after you die, or you can pay real money to repair your
Are you
gear.
serious?
And that's just the tip of the monetization iceberg. It wasn't an awful game at launch, but it's devolved into an awful game today.
That's
and
horrible.
for all of those reasons, I'm going to have to put EverQuest 2 into the C tier. It's something you could jump
Die while making your armor, you bitch. Yeah. I don't even like crafting in WoW. Imagine this was how it went. What the hell?
in and solo your way through for a bit, but the monetization is
EverQuest 2
eventually
on the
going to
C
wear
or
you
two.
down.
C tier.
Next up, we have one of the titans, Final Fantasy XIV.
There it is.
Launched almost a decade and a half ago in 2010.
Let's
it
see
would
where he puts
experience
this.
the most spectacular crash and burn the MMO community had ever witnessed. But it wasn't spectacular because it crashed, it was spectacular because it relaunched in 2013 to great success. Final Fantasy XIV has exciting trials with both
Got to be one of the most successful relaunches of an MMO ever. But seriously, like where did it come? I didn't even know there was a Final Fantasy Online game until the relaunch. That's when it really caught the community by storm. Man, it's got to be like people got to write books about this. The best relaunch ever.
bosses and the stages transforming during the battle, all while an
They
epic
basically did
soundtrack that was
a
made
Cataclysm reset and just came out with a second version of the game, better version of the
just
game.
for that fight rages on in the background. But it's not just the
'Cause
spectacle
you need
that
two
it
brain
puts on
cells
when
for
you're in
crafting.
boss fights, but it's also a great MMO that treats its players like people. There's no predatory monetization, no loot boxes, no pay to win, no create a problem to sell you the solution. The best mounts are earned in game. The best weapon cosmetics are earned in game.
I will say though, you know how sometimes like the timing. Remember I talked about World Star World Star, and how its launch time was badly timed. Final Fantasy's second rebirth was probably one of the most well-timed rebirths ever because WoW was on WoW was heading down at that time. So I think I would honestly guess the majority of Final Fantasy players who currently play Final Fantasy Online are previous WoW players who left WoW during the downtimes. Maybe it was like, when did this happen? Was it WoD or Shadowlands? We saw a ton of people go to Final Fantasy too. So It was a beneficiary of kind of WoW being on a downward tailspin because it had no competition at the time.
Houses are bought with in-game gil. The game doesn't even have a cash shop in it. You have to leave the game and open a web browser to view the cash shop. And with the start of this Dawntrail saga, Final Fantasy XIV isn't slowing down. And whether you like Final Fantasy XIV or not, you've got to admit that it's treating its community the way you wish your MMO would treat you. And for all of those reasons, I'm going to put Final Fantasy XIV into the S tier.
What?
It's hands down one of the best MMOs out right now.
Oh my god, we got a Final Fantasy Andy here. He's putting it in A tier. He's got WoW Classic in B tier, and he's got ESO in the A tier. What is going on here?
It's
Blasphemy.
hands down one of the best MMOs out right now. Next up, we have another classic, Guild Wars
I think he's gonna put WoW. I think he's gonna rank WoW retail. We'll see where he puts it.
1. Launched all the way back in 2005, Guild Wars 1 was a fantastic MMO in its day, and still has a respectable number of players playing it today. It's definitely showing its age these days, as it's long past its prime, but if you were a fan of the game way back when, it might be fun to revisit for...
I don't think World of Warcraft will do a reset the way Final Fantasy did, Sir Dan. I see you're saying I'm convinced Blizzard is going to do a Final Fantasy XIV reset style. The World Soul Saga, I think, is their comeback story. That's what this is. It's basically a 3 expansion reset. They're revamping a lot of the stuff. They added new... basically, what you've gotten at this point is a new talent system, new profession system, and world revamps, new combat systems. Like, they have done it. They're just not doing it the way Final Fantasy did, where it's like this cataclysmic event and now the game reset. I don't think they'll do that. Unless player numbers go to complete shit, that's not going to happen. But we've essentially, since Dragonflight launched, we're getting a soft reset on the game. All the systems have been redone. So it's basically a new game at this point.
For nostalgia's sake. The servers are still up and running, and it holds up reasonably well despite its age, with minimal pay to win. And for those reasons, it still has people playing it today, though not as many as you'd like to make the world feel truly alive. It was a great game in its prime, but today a lot of MMOs are doing what it does better, and for all of those reasons, I'm going to go ahead and put this one into the C tier. It might be fun to visit for the nostalgia, but you probably wouldn't stay there very long. Next up, we have another one of the most popular MMOs on this list, and that's going to be Guild Wars 2. Launched back in 2012, Guild Wars 2 is one of the most underrated games out there. It's free to play with purchasable...
Dynamic flying came from Guild Wars 2. A few other systems. Guild Wars 2 has been kind of Blizzard's always done this in the past. They take a little bit from it and put it in our games. That's what's happened.
Expansions, so it's incredibly affordable to get into. Unfortunately, that also means a lot of the game's most exciting cosmetic progression is rolled into the cash shop, but not all of it by any means. It's worth noting that in recent expansions, they've added a lot of earnable cosmetics, so this is getting better. Guild Wars 2 by far has the best mount system of any MMO that I've ever played before, and it's not even close. You've got mounts that can fly, mounts that can jump super high, mounts that can go underwater. It's amazing, and that's why WoW stole one of its mounts and put it right into its game with dragon riding. Guild Wars 2 also has some of the best zones.
And you know what? I'm glad they did. If Blizzard sees another MMO doing something a better way than they do it, I hope they take it and put it into the game. That's what I want. I don't have any shame in that game. I hope that they do it. And Blizzard's always been Blizzard's never been like groundbreaking, innovative company. They didn't create the MMO genre. They just took everything that was the best from the other ones and put it into one. That's what they've always been good at. So I hope they continue to do that kind of stuff.
Design of any MMO I've ever played. The solo content experience is fantastic. The one place I feel like this game lacks is in the group content. The main questline features tons of voice acting for the NPCs and your character as well. Guild Wars 2 is still adding solid expansions and still has a massive player base. There's 2 things I wish I could change about Guild Wars 2, and that is I wish it had more focus on the trinity of tank, healer, and DPS, and I also wish that it had more earnable mount skins and weapon skins. If it fixed those 2 things, I could put this game into S tier, but because it won't, it's going to be sitting here in the A tier.
The fuck? I mean, what is going on? This is just getting worse and worse. Guild Wars 2 is better than WoW. He just freaking ripped it for a bunch of reasons. Now, again, it's WoW Classic. I guess we'll see what he does with retail. If he ranks retail, I think he will. But right now, I'm very confused by this list. What is going on?
Maybe in Guild Wars 3. Next up, one of the first MMOs I fully degened, and that's going to be Lineage 2, which launched back in 2003. Lineage 2 was an amazing game in its prime. It was a gorgeous subscription-based MMO with amazing castle sieges and raids. It was one of the games that inspired Ashes of Creation, and you can...
Looks like Nintendo 64 graphics. Maybe Nintendo GameCube, actually. I take that back. Crazy taxi Nintendo GameCube-esque graphics. That's probably what fits this. C Cookies. If you want to enter, you got to watch the stream for 1 hour. Exclamation point points will tell you how many points you currently have. Every hour you watch, you get another point. Once you have a point, you can type exclamation point enter space 1. That'll give you 1 entry. And every hour beyond that, you'll keep getting points. You can enter multiple times. Good luck.
Still see a lot of its design in Ashes of Creation. At launch, it had no pay to win.
This list is weird.
Unfortunately, today, it's a pay to win mess.
It's fun.
A shell of its former self. It
We
could
got
be
time.
a fun game to revisit for the nostalgia, but it's no longer getting updates, and it's a pay to win mess. And for that reason, the best we can do for Lineage 2 is put it into the C tier. I had a
Look, I mean, that's fine. You guys are ripping him for, he making the list. We're just kind of going with it. I enjoy the fact that he at least makes the content and puts it out there so we can react to it. So that's good. Do we agree with him? Probably not. Probably not.
ton of fun with this one way back in the day, but I could never go back now. Next up, we've got Lord of the Rings Online, launched in
That's right, Moishi.
2007.
No.
Lord of the Rings Online is a classic take on the classic tab targeting MMO. For being a 2007 MMO, it doesn't look half bad. I think the main reason
Lord of the Rings Online, man. Lord of the Rings is the reason I play WoW. Lord of the Rings, my dad taking me to the theater. We didn't watch the first one in theater. We watched the Two Towers in theater because we didn't even know about Lord of the Rings at the time. Then my dad and I still remember from Blockbuster rented the first Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring, watched it, fell in love with Lord of the Rings, and we watched every single one in the theater from there on out. And man, once I saw that, I was like, I need to play a game like this. I need a game that gives me the Lord of the Rings, I'm an adventurer going on an adventure feeling. And yeah, that was what WoW was for me. Lord of the Rings Online came too late, man. 2007. WoW was already out for like freaking 3 years at that point.
reason it didn't do better is that it didn't seem to do anything better than all the other tab target MMOs out there. So
I've heard it's had like a revitalization,
so many of the others. I think that if you're looking for something different to try and you're burnt out on all the biggest MMOs right now, there are enough people playing this one to get into it and have some fun for a while. This old dog is still getting updates, it's still reasonably monetized, and it's still got a decent player base. And for all of those reasons, I'm going to go ahead and place it into the B tier.
Yeah, that's fine. I actually think, what's it called? Lord of the Rings and WoW in general, the Blizzard team and World of Warcraft owes a lot of its success to the timing it came out with Lord of the Rings. Because Lord of the Rings really brought the fantasy genre to the mainstream. It won all those Academy Awards and everything. It made fantasy not a nerdy thing anymore. And what capitalized off of that? Well, World of Warcraft came in and launched just after and capitalized on the fact that, okay, fantasy's not weird anymore. Let's check out some fantasy games. Oh, what's this? World of Warcraft, most popular MMO. I think it owes a lot of its success to the timing of Lord of the Rings.
Next up, we have Lost Ark. Is it an MMO or is it a casino? Nobody really knows. Launched in the West in 2022, Lost Ark was almost a fantastic game that I thoroughly enjoyed my time in. But I hit the paywall where you're eventually forced to either buy materials from the cash shop or create alts and do the same day
Lost Ark, you're either a whale or you're whale food. That's what Lost Ark's all about.
Every day on all of the alts to grind materials so that you can progress at a reasonable pace. This ends up feeling like a job really fast, and it ruined the experience for me, which is too bad because it had housing, sailing, great zone completion activities, amazing dungeons, and raids. The population of this game is now a fraction of what it was a year ago because I think everybody else is getting tired of the same things that wore me out. And so it seems to be struggling as of late. Until I hit the monetization wall, I was having a lot of fun with this game. And if it wasn't for the excessive pay to win and the excessive over monetization of this game, I could have easily put this one into A tier. But because those problems are there and the population is shrinking at a rapid rate,
do not put it at the same.
I could do for Lost Ark now is
Don't put it
into
B.
the B tier.
Jesus
The one
Christ.
thing that Lost Ark has going
How the fuck is Lost Ark the same as classic WoW and Lord of the Rings Online? I mean, you want to tell me Lord of the Rings Online right now, it's got a little bit of a revitalization. You want to put it, okay, B? Classic should be up here. I don't get what Lost Ark? Come on.
Is the fact that you can play through this entire game free to play as a free to play player. And there's a lot of free to play games where you can't say that. So if you are someone that's really looking for a truly free to play MMO,
not bad.
It's one of the best out there. Next up, we've got a pretty unique entry, and that's going to be Mortal Online, launched back in 2021.
Jesus,
this is a full loot PvP MMO.
Oh, wow.
This game doesn't have a whole lot for you to do as it relies on the players to provide their own content, which can be a lot of
fun. Hold on, what was that a cinematic or was that actual in-game clips there? Where is it? What the hell? This looked really cool.
2021. This is a full loot PvP MMO. This game doesn't have a whole lot for you to do as it relies on the players to provide their own content, which can be a lot of fun. Look at RuneScape or Lineage 2, for example. Tons of player-made content and great games in their time. I think if the combat in this game wasn't so janky, this MMO's world could have been a lot of fun for me. But it's got directional mouse-swinging combat that I really just can't get behind.
Oh,
if
no.
you play MMOs solely for the PvP and enjoy full loot,
Mouse-swinging combat just feels like a mobile game to me. Like, you know, like the swiping on your screen with your finger to hit. That's that's never gonna work. Yeah,
you
that was
could
a
give
bad
this one a
choice.
try, but between the full loot PvP and the janky combat, this one's just not for me. However, I am going to be raising it from the bottom tier of this tier list up to C tier because they are legitimately trying to make a good MMO here, and they are trying to monetize it fairly, unlike the MMOs that are in the F tier here. So we're bumping this one up to C tier this time. It's a
Okay.
game created for a very specific type of player. That player's just not me. Next up, we've got Neverwinter, released back in 2013. Neverwinter was another great addition to the MMO genre. Even by today's standards, it's still a decent game.
Doesn't look
but
too
as
bad.
oftentimes is the case with MMOs, as they age, the monetization has gotten questionable.
God.
Many calling this one pay to win. Actually, let's just be honest. This thing is straight up pay to win now. There's no way around it. That's unfortunate because there's a
Why?
decent MMO under all the monetization. So this one would probably be fun to go back and play for the nostalgia or just to
I get that not every MMO can come out with a sub. It's just not going to work out these days. People are, I don't know, it's a tough one. But there's got to be a better way to monetize shit than go pay to win. Maybe just make it an aesthetic thing. I get it that these MMOs need to make money for the people who are developing them, but you kill your game. You just kill it.
check it out if you never
It's a
did.
death sentence.
But I don't see it being anyone's main MMO in 2024. And for that reason, the best we can do is put this
Josh.
one into the C tier. Next up, we've got New World, which launched back in 2021 and finally
New
became a
World.
complete game in 2023. This is a game that I always have a lot of fun with
I
until
played
I
it a
run out
lot.
of things to do, which doesn't tend to take very long. There just wasn't enough PvE content, and there were too many recycled assets ranging from enemies
New World is one of the games that I talked about very early on in this video that tried to go PvP heavy. It's just not going to work. It doesn't work in an MMO because you're requiring the players to do the things. Right? New World had like these actual time PvP events. I don't know if you guys played early on, where like you had to be on at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon to participate in the big PvP event. You know who the only people who were doing that? It was like streamers who were streaming it, and then their viewers, maybe if they weren't working at the time, would get in and do it. Otherwise, you can't run a game like that. You can't run an MMO like that. You can't depend on players to create the world for you basically by PvPing all the time. So then they were lacking. So the PvP wasn't that great. Now you have no PvE content. The game started to die. Now they've added in a bunch of PvE content, so it's better. But all in all, New World is, I think, it'll be a fringe MMO. It'll never be the top big boy, but it'll stay alive. Amazon's behind it too, so that helps.
to entire towns. As a result, New World suffered a pretty rough launch, but has taken the feedback from the community and is committed to doing its best to fix all of the issues with the game. This game is 3 years old now and night and day better than it was at launch. It recently launched on console, so it's one of the few quality MMOs that
Also, I have to say, you guys know how I don't like professions. New World is the only MMO I've ever played where I loved doing professions because just the cutting down a tree or hitting a stone, I don't know what it was, the echo of the sound, something about gathering in New World was just S tier, was the best gathering I've ever done in any game, and I actually enjoyed it a lot. I would just level up, and when I got tired of leveling, I would just go chop down trees. It just, there was something, it was like a dopamine hit. Every time you hit, and the echo of the wood hitting in the forest or the stone, it was just good.
is on both PC and console, and the content that they've added since launch, like Brimstone Sands, has been amazing. They've now
relaxing.
added the ability to swim and mounts, so the game's gotten significantly better over time. The biggest problem with this MMO is the developers have
burnt.
never really known what they wanted it to be. Back from when it started as a PvP survival game to
Yeah.
becoming a open world MMO game when it launched, and now they're marketing it as an action RPG. The developers just can't seem to decide on what they want this to be, and that has been the Achilles heel of it this whole time. And as a result, it's never really had enough content because they keep changing what it's supposed to be. And
Sure.
they keep remaking the first part of the game, trying to better align it with what it's going to be marketed as this month. Right? So for all these
I
reasons,
think they've got it straight now. They're creating PvE content. It's in a better direction, and it'll stay alive for what it is. But I'm betting Amazon is eventually going to put its MMO bucket somewhere else because all these companies right now, you got Google, you got Microsoft, you got Amazon, maybe Apple one day, who knows? But they're all trying to create the next big MMO. They're all trying to get into the MMO genre a lot because, you know, with virtual reality and all this shit and virtual worlds, MMOs are virtual worlds. That's exactly what they are. So they all want a foot in that, right? Microsoft, instead of making one, just said, hey, we'll go buy the best one. Smart move. Yeah, they went out and bought it. So they have World of Warcraft. Amazon's sitting there on New World. There's been conversations about, I think it was a Lord of the Rings or Star Wars and a second Lord of the Rings MMO or something. So they're working on something else. They're all trying to get into the MMO genre and stay in it. I need to shower.
I think this is actually one of the best games to go back and play if you never did. It's a really fun journey from 1 to max level. You just might run out of things to do.
I don't mind New World being a B tier. I think that's okay. I actually think New World's a pretty decent MMO.
Shortly after you hit max level, but you'll have a good time getting there. On the bright side, New World's population is doing substantially better than it was before. And so for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and put it in the B tier with hopes that I can bump it back up to A tier again soon once they start releasing some more endgame content so that people are actually able to stick around this time. Next up, another MMO that needs no introduction, and that's going to be Old School RuneScape. Old School RuneScape is certainly one of the titans in the industry and also one of the most unique entries. RuneScape launched all the way back in 2001. It was a browser-based MMO that somehow became one of the most popular MMOs
My younger brother,
RuneScape,
I have a younger brother who's like, he's 10 years younger than me. He's 24 now. He freaking loves Old School. He's always loved Old School RuneScape. And it was like out long before his time, but for some reason he freaking loves it.
Was a great game to many, and clearly it did a lot right. But for me personally, I had a computer with a video card, and so I was able to run much more immersive MMOs like World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy. So I never actually made the time to play a browser MMO like RuneScape. That's something that I definitely hope to change someday, but with millions of players still logging in and fair monetization, and it's still receiving sizable expansions today, this game is always really tough for me to place on a tier list. I'm always torn about where to place Old School RuneScape. There's so much that I love about this game, like the fact that the community gets to vote on everything that's added to the game. This ensures that the game stays well monetized because the community gets the last say on whether something's added or not. On the other hand,
I think Old School RuneScape could be an A tier. I mean, for its category, browser based MMO, I think it's the best one.
It is
still
hideous
live.
by
It's
today's
crazy,
standards. Man. Is this really the pinnacle of gaming in 2024? Still, you can't argue with its popularity and its ability to retain its position as one of the most popular MMOs of all time, even today. What it does right, it does so very right. And for that reason, I'll keep Old School RuneScape in the S tier.
I was trying to give the guy some damn credit. I was trying to say, like, okay, he's going to put it in A and everyone might lose their mind. It's a good A. He put it in S. Jesus Christ. Well, how is this an S tier MMO? It's a joke. This is a S tier MMO has to be like the pinnacle of MMOs. How can a browser-based MMO be the pinnacle of MMO? I don't know.
For one more year. Next up, we have Rift. This is an MMO that I disproportionately hear people say, I miss that game, right? More so than I hear people say it about so many other more popular games. Rift launched back in 2011 and was a solid entry, but it fizzled out really quickly. It was good, but it wasn't great. And like I mentioned, a lot of people talk really fondly about this game because it did some things well.
Music sounds
and it had some really unique systems. But with all the better MMOs out there, players never really made time to make this their main MMO. And for that reason, it struggled. Today, you might be able to revisit Rift for a week or two, but it's unlikely you'd be able to play it as your main MMO. And for that reason, the best I can do is put this one into the C tier. Next up, we have the less popular RuneScape, known as RuneScape 3. RuneScape 3 has an odd combat system that tried to move its animations forward but held onto its old, slow tick rate, making everything feel a little bit disjointed. This and a host of other changes caused many players to go back to what is called Old School RuneScape. The monetization of this game, combined with its graphics...
It kind of looks fun, though. I don't know. I think the graphics look kind of fun.
Is just a bridge too far for me. And the fact is, they released a better version of this game before this game came out, and it's called Old School RuneScape. So for all of these reasons, the best I can do for RuneScape 3 is put it into the C tier. If it had better monetization, I could probably try putting it into the B tier, but as aggressively as this one's monetized, I could never make this one my main MMO. Next up, we've got Star Trek Online, launched back in 2010. You can still play Star Trek Online today. It's
still
always
alive?
Been decent, never amazing, but it's definitely one of the more unique entries in the genre.
Who plays these games? Who plays Star Trek Online? Well, like just Trekkies? How does this game stay alive? It doesn't stay. I don't get it. There's some of these MMOs I'm like, who's playing this shit?
It's not the most thriving
Trekkies,
MMO in the
I
world,
guess.
but you can still enjoy
The
the story
developers.
content of this MMO today just fine. It's one of the few sci-fi MMOs out today, and it doesn't have a monetization model
No,
that's
it won't get
preventing
on
you
top.
from enjoying the story content.
He's not going to put Star Trek on top of WoW.
And for all of those reasons, we're going to go ahead and place it into the B tier. It's still good enough to jump into and
Even on the same level. What the hell? What the hell?
play through the story. Next up, another big MMO, Star Wars The Old Republic.
SWTOR.
Star Wars The Old Republic launched...
I've heard a lot. I've watched people play it. I know about it. I almost played it back in 2011 when it came out because I am a big Star Wars fan. It looks freaking great. It still looks fun. The dialogue and all that looked cool. Yeah, we'll see where he puts. I bet you he's going to put this one in A.
In 2011. It has a fantastic single-player campaign with a great story. It's got Star Wars, it's got lightsabers, and all around was a great addition to the MMO genre. It did ultimately end up really lacking in the group content department when compared to its peers. Previously, I'd lowered SWTOR from A tier to B tier because it felt like the developers were putting the game into maintenance mode, and that was eventually more or less confirmed when they announced that they were handing SWTOR off to another developer to maintain. Still, Star Wars The Old Republic has some of the best story content of any MMO and pretty fair monetization, and for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and place it into the B tier. This is easily one...
Okay, I can't predict anything this guy's doing. But what I can say is the fact that they put it on maintenance mode, I think also lends to the fact that they are creating a new Star Wars MMO. Those are the rumors out there. That's what I've heard. And the good thing is they probably learned a lot from the Old Republic, right? They've learned a lot about how to make an MMO, what's good about an MMO, how to make sure you have end-game content because SWTOR didn't. So we'll see what they end up coming out with. It could be good.
One that you can go back and play or revisit if you've never done it. Next up, we have another old favorite of mine, and that's going to be Tera. Tera launched back in 2011, and it was a gorgeous MMO at the time, best known for its fantastic feeling combat. The game was plagued with a lot of problems, and ultimately it was turned into a game you could hardly recognize. Group content became solo content, leveling became compressed, monetization was cranked through the roof, and updates stopped until it was finally shut down. In its prime, it was an amazing MMO with some really cool ideas and some of the best feeling combat ever released. However, the developers...
It's scary that he said group content has become solo content because that's what's happening in WoW. Does that mean we're near the end? You can literally do story mode raids now. You could do delves instead of Mythic Plus. I mean, yeah, it's just you could do single player everything. You don't need groups anymore. You could do what's it called, follower dungeons instead of running a dungeon with other people. Is this an omen? Are we heading down the dark side now?
Developers went overboard with monetization and progression and completely ruined the experience, shutting the game down entirely. If you were able to find a private server to play on and you wanted to jump into the game for a little while, it might be fun for a week. And it was a good game, and if you could find like a classic version of this game, it might be a fun time. So for that reason, I'd put it into the C tier. Next up, we have Ultima Online, one of the forefathers of the entire genre.
One of the OGs.
Ultima Online launched all the way back in 1997. It's long past
Anyone
its
play
prime
this back
now,
in the day?
but it's definitely left its mark. There are still thousands of players logging in to play it every day, which is insanely impressive when you consider its age. But it's old. It's really old. And it shows both in its gameplay and its graphics. It might be fun to jump into this game for a week or two and just see where it all started, and to be able to see what everyone's talking about when they're reliving their glory days. But it's definitely not a game that I could make my main MMO today, and for that reason, I'm gonna go ahead and put Ultima Online into the C tier.
Man, you gotta give these developers credit from back in the day. The fact that they used to create music, like the one that we were just hearing, with it was so limited, the technology. That's all they could do, and they had this like bitrate music. But it actually freaking sounded good. You got to give them credit, man.
Next up, we've got Warhammer Online, launched in 2008. This was a really solid entry into the genre,
I was so
made
excited
by the
for
same
this
guy
game.
that made Dark Age of Camelot, and you can see the resemblance between the two. Unfortunately, this game just had too many problems, too many bugs, too many performance issues, and it wasn't able to retain its player base, which sent Warhammer Online to an early grave. You can still play it on private servers for a trip down memory lane, and it's surprisingly not pay to win, which means it's probably more fun to revisit than a lot of the old.
Well, Warhammer Online had a sub when it came out, so I remember I got in there, I subbed. You had a free trial, I think, for like a little bit, but then I subbed. I did play it, but like I said, there was like a lot of immersion-breaking glitches in the game that just led me back to WoW.
MMO. But the last time I checked in on it, server performance wasn't great, mob AI was kind of wacky, and so for those reasons, the best I can do is put Warhammer into C tier. It's probably not in good enough shape for you to make it your main MMO today. Next up, we have an MMO you may have heard of, World of Warcraft. Launched
Retail,
in
here we go.
2004, World of Warcraft is the most successful MMO of all time.
Look, I mean, say what you want about the game, monetization, whatever. If this is not S tier, then he is completely biased. I don't know what to say. It's S tier. It's still, if you go into other MMOs, a lot of them base their shit off of WoW now, and WoW currently is iterating at a rapid pace. The game's doing great right now. I think the World Soul Saga is great. Dragonflight was a good platform for them to build off of. It's the best MMO. The numbers tell the story.
With Blizzard boasting that the game had over 10 million concurrent subscribers,
get ready to grab
and
the
over
pitchforks.
100 million accounts created all the way back in 2014, with many, many more since then.
And the stories. The stories. I mean, you guys said it. SWTOR had a great story. Great story. Come on. The Lich King, Illidan. I mean, all of this is just, you can't beat this.
Many, many more since then. No MMO comes close to the success that this MMO
Oh boy, here
saw
it comes
in its
B
prime.
tier.
While it's far from its prime today, it's still one of the most
Let's
polished
see.
and complete MMOs today, competing for the #1 MMO spot with Final Fantasy XIV and old school RuneScape. It's an old game, and it's been bleeding players for a long time now as a result, but it's hard to dispute the evidence. More people have enjoyed this MMO than any other MMO in the world, and it's just
I mean, let's be honest. When you fucking hit like 14 million players, you are gonna bleed players eventually. Like it's never just gonna continue to grow. That's not realistic. What Blizzard's done now a really good job of is retaining players, and they're working on getting to a point where they're where new players can actually come in through Dragonflight experience and actually enjoy the game, right? So I'm not saying it's perfect, but when it comes to the genre, it's still king.
released the first expansion of a 3
I'm
expansion
a report,
saga.
Sam.
In other words, Blizzard is still investing a ton of money into this MMO, making it almost impossible for anybody else to put out as much content with as much polish. And for that reason, this is
S.
easily an MMO you could make your main, and it's going to be going into the S tier.
He has rebuilt himself. The man has rebuilt. He has regained all credit with me. He put WoW retail into S tier. There we go.
Next up,
Now
we
the
have
list
Wizard
makes sense.
101, released all the way back
Wizard
in 2008.
101.
This is a really unique entry into the genre. In Wizard 101,
The little kids MMO. This was my little brother's first MMO. Me and my bro, I have two brothers. One that's a year younger than me and one that's 10 years younger than me. When me and my brother, who was close in age to me, were playing all the time WoW, we got my little bro into Wizards 101. He's 24 now. He still logs in sometimes to Wizards 101. Just for the nostalgia.
the combat revolved around collecting decks of cards and using those to fight your way through battles. It has farming, fishing, housing, you name it. It's still got a surprisingly active player base, and it's still getting tons of updates from its developers, making it a game that you could easily dive into and enjoy for a lot of hours if you wanted to. So for that reason, I'll be tossing this one into the B tier. Next up, we've got Skyforge.
You know what Wizards 101 was for me and the people, a lot of people my age? Toontown. If you ever played Toontown, that was actually my first MMO ever, and I didn't even realize it was an MMO at the time. But Toontown was the Wizards 101 of my generation. Man, I love Toontown. It was a good
Launching
time.
in
Killing the cogs, taking over the buildings.
2015 and dying almost at the same time. It was pay to win and mediocre at launch. And it's
I don't
pay
know
to win,
Skyforge at all.
mediocre, and dead today. It's just a game that wasn't good, and it never got good. And for that reason, we're
Club
going to go ahead and
Penguin.
put it into the F tier. Next up, we've got a brand new entry, which released here in the West in 2024. Throne in Liberty is brand new, making it one of the biggest
looks
MMOs
pretty.
out right now. It's light on PvE content, but has a heavy focus on PvP content. Unfortunately, if you combine that PvP focus
It's a mistake. It's a mistake. Anytime, I don't know which developer thinks they're going to get it right. You cannot, I've said it like 8 times this video, base an MMO on PvP. It's just not going to work. It's not going to work. It's too hard to balance. You're dependent too much on having a thriving player base, a good numbers. It just won't work.
with the fact
But this game looks beautiful. I am going to say the graphics look beautiful.
that it's got significant pay to win, you've got the quintessential
God,
Korean
significant
MMO
pay to
formula
win.
where they know the game is going to die fast, but they are hoping to make enough money off the whales before it does to make it all worth it. The game peaked at an impressive 333,000 players, but it's already down to 74,000 players at the time of this video.
Ooh.
The population size seems to be dwindling incredibly fast, and it doesn't look like it will be long before the population is below 50k and then below 30k free, and so on. Still, Throne and Liberty is one of the better, more polished MMOs available right now. It's free to play, and so it might be worth checking out if you're looking for a free-to-play PvP MMO, and you're okay with a bit of pay to win. But for me, the fact that this game launched in a state where the cash shop currency is the same currency you use in the auction house, so you're literally using cold hard cash to buy items in the auction house in a brand new game in 2024, it just kind of ruined it for me, and it made it so that I was never going to be interested in it. And I think that's why we're seeing the player population bleed off as fast as we are.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it saddens me to have to do this, but the best I can do for this brand new MMO is put it into the C
put it
tier.
in F,
I just don't have an interest in fighting against somebody else's wallet. I could, but why bother when there's so many other MMOs that don't make me do that? So there we have it, guys. What do you guys think of the tier list? I just rated something like 39 MMOs. So I know you're going to disagree with me on some of them, and that's totally okay. It'd be kind of weird if I did this and we agreed on all 39 of them. Hopefully you're not too upset. These are just my opinions. They're not fact, right? It's just how I rate these types of games. And I might weigh the importance of some of these things very differently than you do. And that's totally fine. That's part of being human. And hopefully looking back on some of these great MMOs was as fun for you as it was for me. Thanks so much for watching, and a massive shout out to my YouTube channel members. And if you want to become a channel member for access to a private Discord channel or behind the scenes footage, click the join button down below or click the link in the description.
What was the S tiers? We'll go back and look at the list.
Let me know which MMOs you would have rated higher or lower. I actually do read all of your guys' comments and take them into account when releasing next year's tier list video. So I'd love to hear what you have to say. And if you haven't started playing Raid yet, what are you waiting for?
Of course.
Click my link in the description or scan my QR code
meme
on
of all
screen
MMOs.
to get insane bonuses available only via my link. Thanks so much for watching. If you're not sure what to do next, watch one of these videos popping up on screen right now, and I hope to see you guys in the next video.
Look, say what you want about the rankings. It's always a fun video to watch. I've watched Lucky Ghost before. He does a lot of these like tier ranking and all this stuff kind of videos. I like his stuff. Is Raid still around? Hell yeah, it's still around, man. They freaking have an advertising budget out the ass. Yeah, so let's look real quick again at his list, his final list here. Let me see where the final one he put it. Right here.
As we are. And so
so here's his final list. He put that last one down here. So overall, I mean, at the top, you really know. As you get deeper into this, these are a lot of MMOs I don't even know anymore. But yeah, World of Warcraft retail, of course it's an S tier. Of course it is. You can't talk MMOs without talking about WoW. I don't mind old School RuneScape being up there because I actually know a lot of people who still enjoy that. Final Fantasy Online, sure, is also one of the S tier MMOs. I think he hurt Classic too much. Like, I'm not a Classic Andy, and we've talked a lot about Classic on here before, but I think he said he didn't like how they're starting to monetize things in it, but docking it down to a B tier and putting it in the same category as Black Desert and what is this, Albion Online and New World? I don't know about that. Yeah, it's Final Fantasy XIV. That's right. Elder Scrolls Online and Guild Wars 2. I agree with it. They are like the just below S tier rankings. I think that's right. I think Guild Wars 2 and Elder Scrolls Online have always been appealing to a good sized player base. It always been of interest to me. I've always been interested in them. I always kind of keep up on the side about what's going on in those MMOs. Other than that, I might have put New World in A. I think Classic deserves to be an S or an A, and I actually think New World does too. New World they've done a lot of good things in it. It's a decent MMO, and it's an MMO that's not shrinking. It's at least maintaining or growing, so that's a good thing. That's what you want to see in an MMO. Player population matters, and it tells you a lot about an MMO when you see players deciding to play the game again. I think S tiers are all correct. Maybe not RuneScape, but I don't know. Yeah, RuneScape is S tier for what it is. It's the best browser-based MMO, and it's just a completely different niche, but it is the best of those, for sure. And then the rest of these, yeah, just basically pay to win. That's what you can... If it's in C tier, it became pay to win or it died. Warhammer Online, I feel bad for them. They just died off. I wish he would have looked at, what's it called? World Star. I wish he would have looked at it. Or what the hell is it called? Star World. I forgot the fuck what it's called. But anyways, that was a really good one. WildStar. WildStar is the one I'm thinking of. I wish he would have ranked it because I actually think it would have been an A or a B tier. Overall, some things I disagree with, but not a bad tier list all in all, honestly. And a fun video to watch.